Have you ever opened a really massive document, maybe a work report, or even just the terms and conditions for a new app, and you just feel that immediate wave of dread?
Oh yeah, that information overload feeling. There's something important in there somewhere.
Exactly. But finding it feels, impossible, like a huge scavenger hunt. Well, imagine that, but massively scaled up. A huge piece of legislation, so big people started calling it the One Big Beautiful Bill, the OBBB.
Right.
And deep inside this monster bill, there was one specific kind of unassuming provision. And it just ignited this huge public debate, all because of, a pretty surprising admission from a prominent figure. Let's unpack this.
Yeah, and our mission here in this deep dive is really to cut through all that overload you mentioned. We're going to sift through, a bunch of sources. We've got a viral social media post, some pretty critical congressional statements to really understand the core claims around this bill, what's actually being said. We'll fact check the narrative, look at the bigger picture implications of artificial intelligence and how we're governed, and ultimately help you grasp its potential impact on all our lives.
Get to the point quickly.
Exactly. Provide a real shortcut to being well-informed. Find those aha moments, and hopefully leave you feeling enlightened, not just, overwhelmed.
And the specific focus today, it's Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene's really surprising admission about this AI provision in the OBBB. It's a moment that, honestly, it highlights a systemic challenge in how laws get made, how they get passed.
It really does.
And believe me, it absolutely matters to you, whether you're deep into AI or policy, or maybe you're just curious about how the laws shaping our world actually, come into being.
Yeah.
What's truly fascinating, I think, is how the very complexity that sort of led to this oversight, it might paradoxically be solved, or maybe even made worse, by the technology we're about to discuss. AI itself.
That's a really interesting angle.
So let's dive into the spark. The thing that kicked this all off, a Truth Social post that just went viral.
Okay.
It was pretty blunt. It said, and I'm quoting here, MTG said she didn't know what was in the bill or she would have voted against it. 12 years. State and government cannot interfere with AI. It will virtually have total control on who uses it and how. This will destroy jobs and create higher poverty. Wow. It is in the big, beautiful bill that Trump needs to veto. Veto the bill, Trump, or destroy America with uncontrolled use of AI. Pretty strong stuff, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Very strong language. So the first thing we need to do, obviously, is fact check that initial claim, MTG's regret.
Right. Did she actually say that?
And yes, she did. It's accurate. She put out a statement on X that was June 3rd, 2025. And she stated pretty clearly that she was unaware of this specific AI provision when she voted for the OBBB back on May 22nd, 2025.
Okay.
She said quite directly she would have voted against it if she'd known it was in there.
And I imagine that didn't go unnoticed.
Not at all. As you can imagine, this admission, it drew significant criticism from other lawmakers. People like Representatives Ted Lieu and Mark Pocan. They basically questioned, how carefully she'd reviewed the bill before voting, the diligence of her vote.
Okay, so she admits she missed it. And the specific AI provision she was so surprised by, where was it?
It's tucked away on pages 278 and 279 of the OBBB.
Wow. Just 2 pages in that massive thing.
Exactly. A prime example of how a potentially crucial and controversial clause can just get lost. Easily overlooked in a document so vast they literally called it the One Big Beautiful Bill.
Incredible.
Now let's connect this to the bigger picture claims in that post. The post mentioned a 12-year moratorium on states and government interfering with AI.
Right, 12 years.
But the actual provision in the OBBB, it specifies a 10-year moratorium, not 12.
Okay. So a slight inaccuracy there.
A significant one, actually. Yeah. And this limitation, it's specifically on the ability of states to regulate AI systems, models, automated decision-making tools, things involved in interstate commerce.
So like big national AI system.
Exactly. Think about how large corporations use AI for, credit scoring, maybe hiring decisions, even medical diagnostics, things that cross state lines. This moratorium, the idea is to create a uniform regulatory environment for these critical, widespread applications. So that discrepancy in years, 12 versus 10. It's a perfect example of how details get distorted, especially on social media.
Right, details matter. And the post also warned about AI having total control. That sounds pretty scary.
It does sound alarming. But it's important to understand what the moratorium actually does and doesn't do. It only limits state regulation of AI and interstate commerce.
Okay, only states.
Right. It doesn't eliminate federal oversight, and it certainly doesn't, inherently grant AI systems autonomous control over anything. It's not Skynet.
Gotcha. So it's more about who gets to set the rules, state versus federal, not about AI taking over.
Precisely. It's a question of jurisdiction.
So why? Why would proponents want this moratorium in the first place? What's the argument for it?
Well, supporters, like Representative Jay Obernault, they argue it's crucial. They say it's needed to prevent a patchwork of different state laws.
A patchwork, meaning like 50 different sets of AI rules.
Exactly. They believe that kind of fragmented regulatory landscape could really stifle innovation. It could create unnecessary burdens, especially for startups trying to compete in this really fast-moving AI space.
Okay, I can see that argument. But is a patchwork always a bad thing? Couldn't different state approaches actually be like laboratories in democracy, trying things out?
That's the counter argument.
Right. Critics, including MTG herself, and senators like Josh Hawley and Marsha Blackburn, they definitely see this differently.
Very differently.
They view it as a serious violation of federalism. That core idea that power is divided between the federal government and the states.
The principle of states' rights, essentially.
Yeah. Allowing states to tailor laws to their unique local needs. They argue this moratorium strips states of that essential ability. The ability to address local concerns, whether that's, privacy violations or misuse of AI and deepfakes, or maybe healthcare denials based on an algorithm.
Or the big one for them.
Or, the big one, job displacement, which they see as a huge local issue.
And there's a very recent development on this, too. In the Senate.
Oh.
They've introduced a change or proposed one that could potentially tie this moratorium to a $500 million broadband fund.
Really? How would that work?
Well, it would essentially offer states a choice. They could choose to regulate AI within their borders, but if they do, they'd forgo access to those broadband funds.
Wow. So regulate AI or get money for internet access. That's quite a choice.
It's an attempt maybe to find a middle ground, but it's still very much under debate. It really highlights the complex negotiations happening around this bill.
Definitely complex. Okay, so beyond the sort of regulatory federalism questions, that Truth Social post really hit on deep anxieties about AI and jobs, didn't it?
It did, very directly.
Explicitly mention AI destroying jobs, creating higher poverty. And MTG has echoed this concern quite strongly.
Yes, she has. She argues AI could replace jobs in manufacturing, media, even construction.
Which could be devastating for districts like hers, which she says has a very low unemployment rate currently. She warned about potential poverty on a level we've never seen before.
It's a stark warning.
It is. And it's easy to get lost in the policy jargon, but thinking about that concern, job displacement in her district, that's a very human element here.
Absolutely.
Imagine being, a truck driver right now, hearing all this talk about self-driving tech. The anxiety must be real.
It's understandable. And while the claim might sound, dramatic, the plausibility of AI impacting jobs, that's widely acknowledged by economists and researchers.
So it's not just fear-mongering.
No, studies, like some reference in Vox, for example, they suggest automation could threaten various occupations. Think about self-driving technology impacting truck drivers, like you said. Or how AI could automate many administrative tasks, affecting roles across different industries. It's a real concern.
But is it the whole picture?
Well, the extent of job loss is still speculative. It depends on so many factors. How quickly the tech is adopted, how it's implemented.
And whether we can adapt, right? Retrain workers.
Exactly. Which brings us to the counterpoint. AI could also create new jobs, new roles we haven't even thought of yet.
So it's not necessarily a simple equation of AI equals job loss.
Not necessarily. The total impact on employment really depends on deployment, adoption pace, worker retraining, reskilling. It's complex. It's not a zero-sum game, as you said earlier.
Okay. And connecting this back to the OBBB itself, the bigger context. You mentioned earlier, the bill also includes cuts elsewhere.
That's right. It includes cuts to programs like Medicaid and food assistance.
So if significant job losses did happen because of AI,
then those cuts could potentially exacerbate poverty for the people affected. It could create a sort of double impact. That's part of the concern.
Right. That makes sense. Now, the Truth Social post, it ended with this really passionate call for former President Donald Trump to veto the OBBB.
Veto the bill, Trump.
Yeah. But it's important to clarify the process here, right?
Yeah.
As of now, the bill's still being debated in the Senate.
Correct. It hasn't actually passed Congress and reached the president's desk yet.
So a veto isn't even technically possible at this moment.
Not yet. And interestingly, Trump himself, he's actually shown strong support for the bill.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Despite the AI concerns raised by allies like MTG.
Apparently so.
Yeah.
He's praised it on Truth Social, called it the single biggest spending cut in history.
Wow, okay.
So given his public support, a veto from his end seems, well, unlikely.
Even with criticism from others, like I heard Elon Musk wasn't happy.
Right. Musk apparently called it a disgusting abomination. And Senator Rand Paul, another ally, flagged what he saw as a huge $4 to $5 trillion debt ceiling increase tied to the bill.
But Trump seems committed.
It appears that way based on his public statements.
And it's just vital, I think, to remember this AI provision, the 10-year moratorium. It's just one piece of this enormous goal, isn't it?
Absolutely. One piece of a much, much larger puzzle.
The OBBB, it's this complex package. It also includes things like extensions of the Trump-era tax cuts.
Right. Those
Those Medicaid and food assistance cuts we mentioned. And increased spending on things like defense and border security. It's a vast legislative landscape.
truly vast.
Okay. Now, I have to admit, when I first learned about this next part, my jaw kind of dropped a little. It's almost, I don't know, poetic
Hey.
or deeply ironic.
Go on.
Could AI, the very technology causing all this debate, could it actually have helped MTG avoid or oversight in the first place?
Using AI to understand legislation about AI.
Exactly. Could AI solve the problem that AI is, in part, creating or highlighting here? The complexity problem.
The potential is, well, it's genuinely remarkable. AI could absolutely do that. It could summarize massive bills like the OBBB into a much more digestible format. Imagine a hierarchical tree structure outline.
Like table of contents on steroids.
Kind of, yeah. It could break down the entire bill. Major sections, tax policy, spending, AI regulation, maybe specifically noting pages 278, 279, other provisions.
Okay.
And then within those sections, you have subsections, like clearly labeled 10-year moratorium on state AI laws, or even that new potential amendment, Senate Amendment, Broadband Fund opt-out.
Wow.
This kind of tool could distill thousands of pages down into actionable insights, key points flagged automatically.
Think about the benefits for lawmakers like MTG, or frankly, any lawmaker dealing with these huge bills.
Huge benefits.
An AI tool like that could quickly flag contentious provisions, right? Help them understand the implications without needing to read every single word of a 1,000-page bill. It could really democratize access to the details, reduce reliance on briefings from staff or party leaders, which might have their own biases or agendas.
Absolutely. It could transform how legislation is navigated, understood, debated.
Well, there have to be challenges.
Yeah.
Right? It can't be that simple.
Of course.
Yeah.
There are definitely challenges. Ensuring the AI's accuracy is paramount. You wouldn't want it misinterpreting legal text.
No kidding.
And guarding against bias is crucial. AI learns from data, and if that data is biased, the summaries could be too.
That's a big one.
And then there's just the human element, overcoming lawmaker resistance, maybe skepticism about the tech, or just dealing with varying levels of tech literacy in Congress.
So it's not a magic bullet.
Not a magic bullet, no, but potentially a very powerful tool.
And then there's this even deeper irony, or maybe just speculation, that AI might have played a part in writing the OBBB itself.
Yes, that speculation is out there.
Particularly the precise, maybe legalese-heavy language of that AI moratorium section.
Right. Now, there's no direct evidence for that specific section in the OBBB, let's be clear.
Okay, no smoking gun.
No. But it's widely known that AI tools are increasingly used in the legal field for research, for drafting preliminary text.
So it's plausible.
It's certainly plausible that AI assistance was used in drafting parts of such a large bill. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How much of the one big beautiful bill was purely human authored, and how much had algorithmic input?
It really does.
And this connects back to the question of industry influence, too.
How so?
While critics argue that this AI moratorium, the 10-year limit on state regulation, strongly reflects what big tech companies want. They generally prefer uniform, often federal regulation over a patchwork of state laws, which can be more costly and complex to comply with.
So the argument is tech companies might have pushed for this language.
That's the argument. And these companies certainly use sophisticated tools, including AI, to help draft policy proposals and influence legislative language.
So even if AI didn't write this specific clause directly, the influence of AI-powered lobbying might be there.
It's a plausible connection to the broader ecosystem of how policy gets made today. It really shows how hard it is to legislate effectively at the speed technology changes.
Yeah.
Lawmakers are often forced to make these high-stakes guesses about future impacts, leading to these broad, sweeping provisions like the moratorium. And that sparks these fierce debates, like we're seeing now, over balancing national innovation needs with local autonomy and concerns. That's the core tension playing out.
So what does this all mean for us, for you listening?
Well, I think
It means we're watching this real-time tension, right? Between federalism, that idea of states having power, tailoring laws locally, and this push for global competitiveness, for uniform rules, especially in tech like AI.
exactly. It's about finding that balance. How do you foster innovation, stay competitive globally, but also ensure accountability, protect citizens, address local impacts?
Tricky balance.
Very. And the core paradox here is pretty profound, I think. AI can both empower us, like, by summarizing these incredibly complex bills we've been talking about, making them accessible, and at the same time, it can disrupt us by potentially enabling unchecked tech growth, or displacing jobs, or raising privacy issues.
Empower and disrupt, both at once.
Yeah. It really stresses the need for a balanced, thoughtful approach to AI governance moving forward. We need to harness the empowerment, mitigate the disruption.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, let's quickly recap the key takeaways.
Sounds good.
We've unpacked the specifics. That 10-year AI moratorium on state regulation, tucked away in the OBBB.
Check.
We understood MTG's admitted oversight, she missed it, and the debate that followed.
The criticism, the discussion about due diligence.
And we explored the nuanced reality of AI's potential impact, both the concerns about job disruption and its potential role in fostering innovation. It's not black and white.
Definitely not. And I think a key takeaway from all this is the absolute importance of critical thinking, especially when you're getting information from, social media platforms.
Yeah, that Truth Social post had some inaccuracies.
Exactly. Understanding the arguments for and against something like this AI moratorium, differentiating the facts from the hyperbole, it's just crucial. Crucial for informed public discussion and for really grasping how our world is being shaped.
Absolutely. And that leaves us and you with maybe one final provocative thought to chew on.
Okay.
If AI can help lawmakers navigate thousands of pages of legislation, potentially even help draft it, what does that really mean for the future of how our laws get made? And what responsibility do we have as informed citizens to understand these powerful tools that are increasingly shaping our world, shaping our governance?
That's a big question.
It is. We really encourage you to think about it. What kind of future do you want to see? Where do technology and governance intersect? And how do we stay engaged in that vital, ongoing conversation?